Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unlocked weekly live stream. I'm sorry for being a couple minutes late today. We had some technical difficulties, but we are here. So thank you guys so much for being here. Today we have with us Bob, who I will let introduce himself. But our topic is for all of you out of country investors, what do you need to do to get set up to start investing in real estate in the United States? So I have some questions. Bob has a kind of outline we can go over, and I will let you introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you, Jessie. My name is Bob Bluhm. I'm an attorney and have been for many, many years. We represent lots and lots of foreign investors, out-of-country investors, many Canadians, but others from all over the world: Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Canada, I mentioned, UK. We've had people from Japan, Central and South America. So we know literally all over the world, and we know the structures that are necessary in order basically to avoid double taxation, which is one of the big concerns, especially for Canadians, and also to make sure you're protected from U.S. liability.
Okay. Well, we're going to absolutely get into some double taxation. But my first question is, why would someone in a different country want to invest in the United States? Like, why is this so desirable?
Well, because the prices in the U.S. are really, really attractive compared to the real estate market in many other countries. U.S. markets are stable. They're a haven, if you will, for many people in other countries. The opportunities are tremendous in terms of acquiring properties for very little money in many cases, assuming you choose the right markets in the U.S. And you can be very well protected from liability. And so it's just a real magnet for people all over the world to attract in U.S. real estate.
When you say a magnet, like how many folks with your firm alone would you say are making the jump to invest in U.S. real estate? Maybe every year.
Yeah, well, every year in the high hundreds, close to 1,000 every year. And so we represent many, many investors from out of country. Yeah.
And that's your firm alone?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, cool. So definitely hit some of the benefits of investing here. What are some of the drawbacks?
Well, some of the drawbacks are that you need to have a particular structure, but that's not really that much of a drawback, because even if you were in country, you'd want to have a very particular structure for protecting yourself from liability and for reducing taxes. So in terms of drawbacks, there may be a few additional requirements, maybe filing requirements upon the sale of an asset. There's a withholding for out-of-country people, but it's once again only to ensure that you've actually paid the tax, and once the tax is paid, then the rest of the withholding is released. So it's just a temporary inconvenience. I think probably, Jessie, one of the biggest drawbacks, if you will, is just getting used to how easy and permissive it is to invest in U.S. real estate. Many people, have many other countries have banking restrictions, really difficult to borrow. Not so in the U.S. So just getting used to the new system is probably the biggest hurdle that people have. And they're pretty delighted when they actually find out, you mean it's this easy? And the answer is yeah.
Yeah. So as far as, I have your diagrams pulled up, and I do want to go over some of the actual entity structure. But before we get to that, so you're saying once the structure is set up, it's easy to get a bank account. It's easy to get lending. Are there any additional steps or hurdles that, I've heard some of our out-of-country students say that their terms aren't quite as good through a hard money lender as they would be if they were United States citizen. So is that something you see?
No, I think they're dealing with the wrong hard money lenders. I've got a number of hard money lenders, private lenders, who are more than happy to lend to Canadians and others from out of country. And the terms are quite favorable. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, not an issue. Why don't we look at some diagrams if you have?
Yeah. Okay.
Let's do that.
So I have your general partner pulled up. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Today is a day of difficulties.
There we go. Yeah, there
we go. Does this work?
Yeah, this is a good structure for somebody who is a Canadian investing in U.S. real estate, and we have lots and lots of Canadians doing so. The Ohio on this diagram doesn't mean you have to invest in Ohio. This is just an example, but it is state specific. So, for example, if you are buying Ohio real estate, you need an Ohio entity to do that. If you buy New York real estate, you need a New York entity to do that. So it's state specific. Okay. So this is called a limited partnership. And in a limited partnership, there are two classes of partners. There's at least one general partner and at least one limited partner. And the general partner would be like the executives of, say, a major bank. Let's pick TD Bank. The executives have signing authority for the bank. They make daily decisions about how to run the bank. And that's what a general partner in a limited partnership does. It's the management arm of the limited partnership.
Okay.
Limited partners would be like the shareholders of TD Bank who own the company, but they don't run the company. So because limited partners are completely passive, limited partners are completely protected from liability. So limited partners have no personal liability whatsoever, but the general partner does have liability because it has control. So for that reason, we don't make the individuals and a general partner because that would expose them to liability. So instead, we create a corporation, which is the general partner. And then we structure the corporation so the individual investor is the president and the shareholder and the director of the corporation. So that way, they are protected from general partner liability because they're acting through the corporation, and they're automatically protected as limited partners from U.S. liability because they are limited partners. So that's a very good structure.
Bob, is this something, I mean, everything you're saying, I don't know that, like, would it benefit a United States citizen as well? Because it sounds more about protection than just necessarily investing here.
Well, this is a very common structure for U.S. investors as well, especially when they do syndications for larger properties. Yeah. But when somebody in the U.S. is buying a single family home, they use an LLC typically. However, the other reason that we really want to use this structure for a Canadian in particular is because it eliminates double taxation.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, yes, and that's quite important. The reason it eliminates double taxation is because a limited partnership qualifies for a tax credit under the Canada-U.S. tax treaty. And what that really means is that just to make up some numbers, let's say somebody from Canada investing in the U.S. earned $100,000 in the U.S. They're required under Canadian law to report that $100,000 to the CRA and pay Canadian taxes on that $100,000. The problem is the IRS will say if you're earning income in the U.S., you also have to pay U.S. income taxes on the same money, and that would be double taxation. So the way this limited partnership eliminates double taxation is because under the tax treaty between Canada and the U.S., a Canadian is credited for any taxes paid in the U.S. against any taxes owed in Canada. So just to put numbers to that, if they earned $100,000 in the U.S. and paid $20,000 of U.S. income taxes, they report the $100,000 to the CRA and they get a $20,000 credit against any Canadian taxes owed. That is called a foreign tax credit.
Where does their actual taxes go? To the U.S. or Canada?
Well, both, but the taxes are paid in full in the U.S. according to U.S. tax rates, which are quite a bit lower than Canadian tax rates.
Okay.
But then they get that $20,000, in our example, a $20,000 credit against any taxes owed in Canada. Now, Canada may impose a higher tax on the same amount of money.
Got it.
So let's say they owed $28,000 in Canada. Well, they would subtract the $20,000 they've already paid in the U.S. and owe only a net $8,000 to the CRA.
Understood. Does that same concept apply in countries without a treaty, or would you be double taxed?
Well, that's the trick. The treaty is required, and the U.S. has tax treaties with most countries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, I have to say though, if you're not a Canadian, it's quite a bit simpler because we don't have to worry about the same type of double taxation. We can use a limited liability company for you in the US, which is typically what a US person would do, is use an LLC. The problem for a Canadian using an LLC is that it will result in double taxation because an LLC does not qualify for a tax credit under the treaty, only the limited partnership. So we have to be careful. Yeah.
Okay. So if we have, anyone in our audience who's watching live, who is watching this on the replay, and once is like, okay, I'm ready to make the jump into the US, what would step one be?
Step one is, truth be told, getting a good coach who can show you how you want to invest in the US. They've made the mistakes. They can prevent you from making mistakes. So having a great coach is really, really important.
You guys, I didn't tell him to say that, but it's so true.
Well, it is. It's absolutely true. That's step number one. And then as you learn, different aspects of real estate investing, and there's so many different ways you can invest: wholesaling or flipping or buying long-term rentals or short-term rentals or mid-term rentals or multifamily of some kind, or, flipping land or any of
all the terms. All the terms, Bob.
Well, sure. I mean, you've been representing a lot of real estate investors for a long time. So, I mean, there are so many different ways you can invest. And the key is to work with a great coach who's going to help you decide what's best for you based on the amount of money you have and your time frame and everything else. So that's step number one. Then step number two is get the right legal structure. Yes. And number three is, while you're doing that, start looking for deals, making offers on deals. And as the deals are accepted, you've got the structure ready to go.
How the process of getting the structure set up, how much time in your timeline should you add for this?
It could be depending on the state, because some states are fast, other states are slow. Ohio in particular is a terrific state. We can have a GP-LP structure set up in about 10 business days.
Oh, wow.
In Ohio. Yeah, and then we need another week to draft the bylaws, the operating agreements, the limited partnership agreements, and the other documents. But maybe 3 weeks total in Ohio. Other states might be longer, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, depending.
So U.S. wide, safe to say 3 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, okay. Very, very safe to say. Right.
Yeah, 3 to 6 weeks, and then as far as your firm goes, you listed quite a bit of supporting documents. Is that something that kind of comes with the entity package, you would say?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that would be expected. And we draft all the documents, minutes, resolutions, membership registries, all the things that literally are required by U.S. courts in order for you to have a fully functioning entity that is not going to have the veil pierced.
Talk to me about piercing the veil.
Well, piercing the veil is a big deal. Yeah. It's major. Over 50% of the cases have the veil pierced, which means that while you're not supposed to have any personal liability, in fact, when the veil is pierced, they can take your personal assets. So the veil is the entity itself that protects you from liability. But if the entity is phony, not set up properly, or not operated properly, I should also say, then the court will pierce the veil and make your personal assets available to a creditor. So that's why we're so careful in drafting all of the necessary documents. And we also coach you on what to do with the entity once you have it, so you operate it in a business-like manner.
That is key. And that was definitely one of my questions. So the setup is one thing, but ongoing management, it's critical. So yes, how do you help your clients with that portion?
Well, we will, on request, we'll draft minutes and resolutions for clients. We will draft, other documents that they may need. We encourage them and educate clients to say, you should have a good accountant. You should have a bookkeeper. You need to have financial statements. You need to have, all the things that a big company would have. Real companies have bank accounts. You'd be surprised, Jessie. Sometimes we set up 2 or 3 entities for someone and they say, okay, which one needs a bank account? The answer is all of them.
Yeah.
Because real companies have bank accounts. You want to prove this is a real company.
Speaking of multiple companies, would this be a good time to pull up this like JV structure?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, let's do this one. Okay, got that.
The other structure we want to look at, make sure we have time for, is the multi-state structure.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Perfect.
If you're good. Once somebody has an entity, and this is once again appropriate for Canadians. Let's say you are you have the structure on the left, and let's say you have 2 or 3 other partners, so to speak, who have the same structure. They're Canadians, is the assumption, and you're going to do what is called a joint venture. That means that each one of you will have an actual active role in the ongoing property. So someone might be great at acquisition. Somebody else might be in charge of the renovation of the property. Somebody else might be watching the money, watching the pennies. Somebody else might be in charge of tenant relations, etc. You can see the different roles. The difference is if you're bringing on passive investors, which are doctors and lawyers and accountants and IT professionals and dentists who are busy and they just say, here's my money, give me a check. That is a security when you have passive investors, and you've got to comply with US and Canadian securities laws. So the alternative is not to have a security with passive investors, but rather to be able to do a joint venture with all active investors.
So you would suggest if you are foreign national and also raising money from foreign nationals that you combine as a JV versus a traditional kind of lending or private money lender setup.
Well, yeah. Now, a private money lender is in place of a bank, which is fine. But when you're raising private money from individuals who are not in the business of lending, and they're just looking for a return, that can be a security. Okay. So we got to be careful, and that's typically done with larger projects. But so this is a great structure for somebody to be able to pool funds with others and not have it be a security.
Okay. I love it. And then you had one more that is one person, but across many states.
Yes. This is a very important diagram because for somebody who wants to scale their business and not be restricted to just one state, now we would use this diagram. And a minute ago, I said, don't use an LLC or you'll be double taxed, but now we have LLCs. So why? Well, it's because of the way the structure is set up. The limited partnership owns the LLCs, which in turn own the properties. So in other words, the limited partnership is a holding company. And my friend Ron LeGrand loves to say a holding company is a company that owns other companies. And that's what a holding company is. It's not a company that holds title to property. It owns other companies. So here, somebody's investing in both of Florida and Ohio. And so we would have an LLC in Florida to own the Florida properties. We have an Ohio LLC to own the Ohio properties. And notice that because the limited partnership owns the LLCs, the income generated in the LLCs really belongs to the limited partnership. So that's why I have the little arrows going from the LLCs with the dollar signs. All of the income generated in the LLCs flows into the limited partnership. The investor takes their income from the limited partnership. That is what qualifies for a foreign tax credit and eliminates double taxation. If they don't funnel the money through the limited partnership and they take it directly from an LLC, they will be double taxed.
Okay. And so these are like kind of 3 common setups. Without going into a ton of details, like, are there other scenarios that you guys deal with, or does most people's situation fall into one of these 3?
No, there are other scenarios as well. Okay. And they're all very fact specific. So these are, once again, these are fact specific too. I mean, this is appropriate for someone who wants to invest in more than one state. The first one we looked at was someone who invests in only one state. Right. So the facts dictate the structure, not the other way around.
Would you need to know if you're only going to invest in one state at the time of setup, or could you add a second state, third state later?
You can add a second or third state later. In other words, these structures can morph based upon, changes in your plans.
Okay. Well, you guys, if you're watching live and you have any questions for Bob, I mean, he's done this. They work on near 1,000 setups, entity setups every single year, and has been doing this for decades. So if you guys have questions, now is the time to throw those in the comments. We'll get them answered for you. We do have one that we touched on briefly, but some people have since joined. So does this work for other countries or just Canadians?
Oh, no, it works definitely for other countries. However, other countries may not need the GPLP structure. For people in other countries, we can simply use a limited liability company set up in the U.S. and you're ready to invest in the States. So it can be simpler for people who are not Canadians.
Awesome. Can you give us a good idea for the standard, say, Canadian with one corporation and one state LLC? What's a ballpark cost to get that started?
Yeah, to set up the GPLP structure, the pink box and the blue circle on the first diagram and assuming we're setting it up in Ohio, which is once again a great state for good laws, for business-friendly attitudes, landlord-friendly as opposed to tenant-friendly, zero business tax on beginning income. The cost would be around $2,000 with everything included for the corporation and another $2,000 for the limited partnership. That includes the state filing fee, our professional fee, registered agent, and Corporate Transparency Act report as well.
So the ability to move funds from your high property value country to the United States for a $2,000 setup cost is mind-blowing. That you have the ability to actually invest somewhere that you may, to invest in real estate when you may not be able to in your own home country. That's incredible. I mean, the access that you have is worth every single penny. So I actually didn't know how affordable it was until right now, but I'm very impressed.
Well, and Jessie, speaking of the setup, but as a great real estate coach, the prices, the prices people can get properties for. I had a client. Now this is way out of the norm, but I had a client buy a property in Akron for $26,000 cash.
That's not that far out of the norm.
I know, and he's doing cartwheels. He said, "I can't believe it. That would be like 1 month's rent. Somewhere." So,
wow.
He's beyond thrilled.
Well, that's awesome. We do have a question in the comments. So, would you recommend getting multiple LLCs in Ohio? So, is this like a LLC per property? Is what a lot of people typically ask.
No. And it does not have to be one LLC per property by any means. You can group a number of properties into one LLC, but depending upon how large your portfolio gets, you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket. And so, if you have 10, 20, 30 properties, you may want to have more than one limited liability company, certainly. But it's not necessary to have just one property in one LLC. That's overkill.
Overkill for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Bob, do you have anything else to share with us before we tell everyone how they can reach you?
I got lots of stuff to share, but we only have a certain amount of time. But Jessie, this has been wonderful. I'm glad that we've been able to talk like this, and more than happy to help any clients that need assistance in getting the proper setup.
So we will have this on replay and forever and ever. It's also on our YouTube channel. So we will get your contact info. We'll put it in the post. We'll put it in the YouTube. And if anyone wants to reach out to Bob, you guys, he has proven they've done this time and time again successfully and has a super, I'm honestly very impressed with the affordability to be able to tap into the US market. So if you guys want to reach out, his contact info will be everywhere that you're watching. And we thank you so much for your time.
Bye-bye.